This is Naomi Spritka. I'm the Birth to Three educator and coordinator for Door County. I'm actually not the person that was going to start speaking. Rebecca was going to go first, but I don't see her yet.
I just emailed her, Naomi, so maybe she's still jumping on.
So I guess I'll just punt a little bit and tell you kind of how we got connected with I'm not really even sure how this all fell in place. I know that we were part of a presentation regarding the resource for the ACT developmental milestones, and we just shared during that time how we began utilizing this. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. We have the luxury of being logistically positioned right next to our public health and WIC office. Our suites are side by side, and so we have a really good working relationship, and we're also under the same umbrella in Department of Health and Human Services here in Door County. And so quite a few years ago, during typical collaboration that we would have with public health and WIC, I saw this resource, the Milestone Moments booklet, and really loved it. And so we're very cognizant in our county to be, when possible, to be using the same type of resources for our community. And so this was an opportunity for us to continue to do that. And so I use that resource in mailings to families, whether it's just basic information on developmental milestones that they need, or as a support tool that a family needs who may or may not have services with us. So, you know, like I said, we logistically have the luxury of being so close. So that teaming happens very naturally to us just because we have the ease of being neighbors. Also in our suite are our child protective services, our children's long-term services, and our CCS services, all who also support children and families in our county, and we're all in the same suite. And I think that that's what makes our communications and our supports to our families very effortless, because we see each other on a daily basis, just going to get a cup of coffee. So those relationships have become very comfortable, and it's just very natural to have that partnering going on, because we are side by side in our suite. So but just a little bit of history prior to that. I don't know exactly if it was about 5 years ago, but that's the number I'm going to throw on it. Beth, you might have a more accurate number, but our community as a whole had a sit down with many collaborating people in our community, because we were noticing that when children were starting 4K, they were not coming with typical readiness skills that we had noticed most kids should have. So we had people at the table over the course of 6 months to a year to have discussions about why that was happening, what we could do as a community to help our youngest population and our families, because it really starts with you know, the moment those babies are created and what's happening in the home of those parents that are, you know, growing their families. So we had law enforcement, we had medical providers, we had education teams, we had therapists and counselors, we had public health, many team members from the Department of Health and Human Services. It was really quite a beautiful process to have these teamings and collaborations. And then we created what we call the Door County Community Partnership. And that's that I believe is what helped us going into the pandemic do so well, because we already had this strong foundation. Shortly after that partnership was developed, our department of Health and Human Services went through the trauma-informed care approach. So I think those were two really big things that we already had in place when the pandemic hit. So I don't know, Beth, do you have any more that I might be missing in regards to that?
No, I think you summed it up beautifully. And I looked back in emails, and you're right. It was about 6 years ago, I think, and maybe Rebecca, who is also Beth Chisholm. So this is fun. We're going to like just mess with you guys. Who's who? Two of me. Woo, you guys are in trouble. But no, Naomi, I think you did an excellent job of summarizing. I grew up in this community. I've worked in this department almost 30 years, and I've always been impressed. I went to school in the Milwaukee area, and I don't know that I even saw such wonderful collaboration in a major metropolis as that as I do here in Door County. And we're just, like Naomi said, we're just very blessed and have the luxury of some really, really great relationships with our medical community and our greater Health and Human Services community and the United Way, which I'm sure Rebecca will speak some more to. So thank you.
Yes, I will jump in. Again, I apologize everyone for my late arrival. I was having technical difficulties, and just as in true collaboration, Beth saved me and Naomi took over my presentation. So we're good. But yeah, so the Door County Partnership for Children and Families is a program of the United Way of Door County. And yes, the ladies are correct. It started out of a conversation in the community back in 2015. So my role is a community connector. So I connect families with resources based on my own lived experience. So many of the programs that we have in Door County and support services, I have used myself with my family. So I can offer more of like a peer support type relationship with the clients that I see. And we have several coalitions and committees that also meet regularly within the county, which really helps with the communication between all the partner agencies and organizations so that everybody can stay on the same page, use the same language. It just really creates this cohesiveness. And for our families and our residents that use our services, it's very helpful to them because they're getting the same, again, messaging and guidelines and things from all the different organizations. So it really creates like a wraparound approach. And we are all very trauma-informed care advocates. So we do lunch and learns every other month to keep up to speed on that. So yeah, we work very hard to work together so that our residents are supported in the best way possible. And Naomi, because I had a late start, I wasn't sure if you dived into the developmental milestones booklet or anything yet.
I kind of did.
Okay.
I started with just kind of telling them how that resource fell into my hands and just the teaming that we already had in place with public health and WIC, and then how we just as a community, when we have the opportunity to be using a similar resource, that, we're all about sharing that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why reinvent the wheel if someone's already got something great in place? And I think that it helps for continuity with our families, that they're getting the same information from, different entities. So along with that booklet, when our young families come to us, our pediatricians and then our family services team, as well as my program, when we're doing a developmental screen, we have the same screening tool as well, so that again, so that we're all kind of looking at situations through this similar lens, so that families are getting the same information. And they're, because there's a lot of resources out there, and it's a lot of confusing information, and everyone comes with a different bag of tools to use. So if we all come to the table with the same type of communication, I think it makes the path moving forward for our families a lot easier. So.
Naomi, can you speak a little bit about the digital component or using technology in the face of not being able to meet face to face, both how you met with families or how we meet with families, and then about the tools available and how you distributed that information to the families, like the text app and things like that?
Yeah, I have to say that I don't use the text app quite as often as my public health and WIC providers do. They are much more fluent in that, and that's part of their intake and their support when they go in for their WIC updates and stuff. But it's something that our program definitely is open to moving forward with, because let's be honest, that families today are gonna have a chance of responding to a text over a phone call. That's just where we are technology wise. So having that developmental tool on their phone versus a paper resources is a easier option for some families to utilize. But definitely in a home, if I happen to not have a hard copy booklet with me, which I almost always do, they have this wonderful tool that a family can download, and you can punch in a child's age and get some great information. And so that's a really nice resource for our families to have who really do live via their phone, which is more of a norm these days. When the pandemic hit, like the rest of you, everyone just kind of took a moment to pause of like, okay, well, how do we do this? And so we switched to, and I think we were not alone in that you really didn't know how long you'd be doing this. I think we all kind of thought, okay, a couple months. And then September came and we were still not in a good space. And I think we honestly thought we might be turning a little bit of a corner. But then school started, and what was that going to look like? And I don't know, it really was a learning curve in many facets. But our therapy delivery had to switch to, like many things, a virtual venue. We were fortunate enough to have we never had an issue of families not having devices or internet access, really. So that was a hurdle that we did not have to face, fortunately. And if they were not comfortable, or if it was just not something that a child could sit and have a therapy session with, we did a ton of resource mailing, hands-on mailing, video mailings. And really, the really cool thing is in Berta 3, we do the primary coach delivery. So it really allowed for the parents to kind of step into that role of, I can do this. I don't need the therapist to fix this for me. I can do this with them a little bit sooner than maybe they would have had comfort doing it, because they had to be the hands-on because we were across the screen from them. So that was really kind of a cool thing to see the parent empowered a little bit sooner than maybe they would have traditionally. We weren't able to hold hands quite as long as we would have had we been in the home. It wasn't perfect. And definitely now that we are back in the homes, we much prefer that. But for us, it worked as pretty well. I mean, I don't know, Beth, do you have more to add on that? No. Okay, Rebecca, back to you. I'm talking way more than I said I would.
Oh, you're doing wonderful. So yeah, the other, trying to think if there's anything else. I just really want to mention that we are using what's called collective impact to do our collaboration. So if you're not familiar with that term, and you want more information about it, I'm going to say, Nicole, if you could please send our contact information out. I can be a guide for Collective Impact. I've done presentations on it. Naomi and Beth can answer questions related to Birth of Three and any other questions on how they worked through the pandemic. But that's really all I have. I'd like to open it up to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, everybody's pretty quiet, so no questions at this time. But again, Nicole will send out our contact information, so please feel free to reach out. We not only like to collaborate locally, but we do as much as we can throughout the state. So we're here if you need us. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for presenting. Just want to give one last opportunity for questions or comments.
Maybe I missed it. This is Barb. What's the screener that you're all using, the developmental screener that you've decided to all use that allows you to better track and work together?
So the screening tool that we use here with our pediatricians and then with our family service providers is the ASQ screening tool. So it helps with continuity in that just for communications and families, and then when we're referring and following a child, they've all started with the same type of screening tool. So
I'm going to add a little tidbit here. So coming down soon, hopefully, we just applied for some funding and it looks very promising. We are in a 2-year planning phase to develop a program called Welcome Baby. So you may have heard something similar in other counties. I know Brown County is doing it, Sheboygan County. So what this is doing a universal screening using a screening tool. And it's not the same one that Naomi mentioned, but it is meant to be done either prenatally or at the birth of a child when it's a first-time parent, so that we can reach those high-risk families right from the start, and also, even if they're not high risk, still provide them with a nice little folder of information along with a book called The Brain Game. So they'll get that too. And this actually is by age group. So 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, all the way up until 3 years of age. And it's how parents can play with their kids and do some scaffolding work with them and really be watching for those signs of developmental delays. So that's very exciting. At that point, then what we would do is, if the screening is done prenatally, we would set up a time for a family resource specialist to meet with the parent. If it's at birth, the specialist can go to the hospital before they're discharged or to the home after discharge. Of course, everything is very family centered and family driven here in Door County, so we would never force this on anyone. It would be totally voluntary, but we just really want to catch these kiddos right away from the start, so that we can, in addition to the other preventative things we're doing in the county, we're hoping this will also fill the need of getting those kids to school ready to learn and ready to emotionally handle being there.
Well, and just to piggyback what Rebecca's saying, it's really about empowering those parents to make sure that they have the tools that they need. So the Welcome Baby program is our hopes of supporting those parents, prenatally before the baby's actually here, so that they feel a little bit more prepared when baby arrives. And so that's kind of our goal on that. So